Right, okay, moving on. We've now got three speakers in quick succession on a panel about the case for digitally enabling reassurance policing. And I'm going to invite the first of our speakers onto the podium. He's James Slessor, Managing Director for one of our sponsors, Accenture. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you to Make Time Count for inviting me here today. What Jonathan, Peter, and I hope to do today is just talk a little bit about the opportunity we see for using technology and digital tools to reimagine reassurance policing. And Danny, you asked a question of Jonathan at the outset of, what is the scope of innovation within this space? Well, I think the scope for innovation is absolutely huge. And I think some of the thinking that Make Time Count has started to produce is really world-leading. At Accenture, I'm very privileged to have a role that means I go around the world working with lots of different police forces, lots of different public safety agencies. And this is very much a common challenge. And you'll hear a little bit today about how taking a platform approach, and some of you may be familiar with platforms because things like Airbnb and Uber are platforms that connect different networks and different ecosystems. By taking that sort of digitally enabled platform approach, you can really change things. And nobody until now has taken that approach within criminal justice. But that is what Jonathan and Make Time Count have started to do. And I think with the support and the input of the wider criminal justice community, this really does have the opportunity to be groundbreaking across the criminal justice system. So what I wanted to do was just set a little bit of context. And to be honest, for most people in this room, this will be entirely familiar to you all. We've already heard about many of the common challenges that policing is facing at the moment. The fact that there's new threats, old threats finding new forms, that technology's disruption is creating this wave of change across society. Behaviours are changing, citizens are expecting more, citizens are expecting a more tailored, a more bespoke type of service. We hear, increasingly we have a more and more inexperienced police service under more pressure, greater attention issues. So how can we support this environment? How can we solve some of these challenges? Again, there's continued pressure, and you go to many of these conferences and you hear the need. We need a wider multi-agency response. And of course, fundamentally, how do we improve trust and confidence? Probably the most critical issue in public safety today. And as I say, I'm very privileged that I get to see this in lots of different places. And whilst all of these challenges are particularly acute here in the UK, they're not unique to the UK. I was in Europe speaking with the Dutch police, exactly the same type of challenges, similar in the US as well. And a big part of the response to this is where we need to go back to reassurance, we need to go back to neighbourhood policing. We need to go back to that visible, accessible, and familiar approach. We need to work closer with our communities, we need to address the fear of crime, and we really need to regain that public trust. But in order to do that, I think we do need to look back and we need to learn lessons from the past. And we can't simply take the old approaches and bring them to today. There are reasons why reassurance policing faced a number of challenges, and the world itself has moved on. So we need to think about how do we reimagine it? How do we do things differently? And part of that is taking a more digital approach. How can we reduce the cost of delivery? The headwinds of austerity presented significant challenges. So how can we reduce that cost of delivery? How can we better manage interventions? We've heard a lot about out-of-court disposals and how out-of-court disposals offer huge possibilities, but they also bring workload challenges, and we need to think about how can we implement those in the most effective way. And equally, how do we actually track and measure and understand the outcomes and the results? And I think this platform-based approach, the use of technology, is a huge opportunity for us to grasp. It gives that ability to manage victims and offenders in a local context with greater understanding. It allows you to divert, protect, and support the offender and their families. And critically, it's an enabling and a supporting tool for officers. No, it's there to provide guidance, it's there to provide support, it's allowing them to make decisions confidently and in an informed manner. So again, it shouldn't be seen as a threat, it should be very much seen as an enabling and a supporting capability. And equally, it goes back to creating a bespoke and tailored approach. It allows the matching of a range of different types of services and the different types of support to be specific to the individual. It's not a one-size-fits-all. It allows efficiently and effectively that creation of the right types of services for that person in need. So a little bit of context from a global perspective in terms of what now Jonathan will talk a little bit about in terms of actually what does this mean and what does this look like in practice.
Okay, we talked the £10 billion challenge. When we broke it down and actually created the business case, we think it's more like £1 billion a year that we can save from the criminal justice system by doing diversion more effectively. By doing more diversion, we take cost away from the court system. So we create an overall positive business case for the criminal justice system. By doing diversion better, we reduce reoffending and we cut the cost of crime for society. So roughly £1 billion a year, magnified over a number of years, we get to our £10 billion challenge. In order to hit that, and we just heard before, we've got to do more diversion and we've got to do them better, which is very difficult to do in a context of budget challenges and everything else, but I think it's possible. So in order to do more, we have to help the officer make an informed decision. So what we built, and I touched on it before, is the eligibility screening tool. This offence has happened. These are the mitigating and aggravating factors related to that offence. This is the user that's involved. This is their history. You need to take all of that into consideration when making your decision. We've got a lot of officers on the street, relatively inexperienced, maybe only 1 or 2 years. This may be the first time that they've encountered such an event. How is it we're helping them to make a decision? This is the tool that we've built with the police to make sure that the decision, in this case, is a community resolution. It helps the officer say, yep, okay, I'm confident about that decision. I don't have to take the person back to the station. I don't need more input in order to make that decision. But now I've made the decision, and I've touched on it before, I've got to understand the root cause. In this example, why did Johnny nick the Mars bar? Right? Did he nick it because he's hungry, because he hasn't got a job? Did he nick it because he wants to sell it to buy drugs? Or did he nick it because he just thinks it's funny? Right? Unless you understand those 3 root causes, you don't know what to do with Johnny. Right? You're going to slap him on the wrist and tell him not to do it again? Well, you've got to deal with these root causes. And that's, again, exactly what we've built. So we've built 2 configurable needs assessment tools, one sort of simple, the officer can do on the street, one more in-depth that maybe a specialist in a station would carry out. That needs assessment is directly linked to a condition which is directly linked to one of your service partners. Right? So if I identify that Johnny nicked the Mars bar because he hasn't got a job, my condition says I'm going to send you to a local recruitment agency who specialises in helping ex-offenders get jobs. Right? And that's done automatically in the background. The officer doesn't have to go, oh, crikey, who works with ex-offenders? Oh, blimey, what's the local recruitment agency? Oh, I'll get the yellow pages if such a thing still exists. It's all done in the background for the officer. Right? This process of finding a referral partner, filling out that Excel file, sending it over to the person, we timed it. It used to take a probation officer between 45 and 60 minutes to do. They still didn't know whether the person turned up to that session. They didn't know what they thought of it. All that's now done in the background for the officer, right? The officer knows that session's been, that condition's been made, that referral's been made. So let's take an example. I'm just going to walk you through it, right? So the police officer arrests Johnny in my Mars bar example. The first thing he does is set him up on the system, right? So now Johnny's got notifications. He's got a shared calendar. He's got ability to chat to people. He's got the ability to check in and check out appointments so he can prove that he arrived and he proved that he left at the right time. He can give feedback. This was one of the things we pull out from probation. People want a voice in the process. You're asking me to do things that I think are pointless, but I'm still doing them. That voice is not heard. That voice doesn't come back to the people making the decisions about what to do. So this is what we do. We give the users a voice. And also, we give them the resources and the tools. Here's the service directory. Go refer yourself to people that can help you. So we've set up Johnny. The first thing the officer does is get a specialist involved. A lot of forces that we're working with, we're urging them to take this central team approach. I talked about it before. Police officers, this isn't a natural skill for them. We haven't trained police officers to do this type of work. So this specialist, he's a diversion specialist. He understands how to do a needs assessment. He understands how to refer my user. So the specialist goes through the needs assessment, and what the system says is, well, this person needs a mental health advisor and needs a mentor. This is what the system says that is the most appropriate example for Johnny. The mentor then says, after the session, do you know what, Johnny, you used to play football. Why don't you get back into football? You know, it's going to help you. So she refers Johnny to a local football team so he can get involved. Johnny says, do you know what? I want my Uncle Bob to be part of my account because Uncle Bob helps me keep straight. Uncle Bob will help me turn up to the appointments. Uncle Bob will help me get through this, right? We know that if you have a positive role model in your family, it can have a positive influence on you. Even if Uncle Bob doesn't tell me to turn up to my appointment, the fact that I know that Uncle Bob will be told if I miss it is enough to make me show up, right? We know this from various other sectors. And then Johnny finds a support group on the app and says, do you know what, I'm going to go to this support group for people like me and it can help me. So we've created this network, this ecosystem of support that is unique to Johnny, right? And that network will be different for every single user. So what we've created is basically a little Formula One pit crew around Johnny, right? They're there to keep Johnny on track. They're there to support him, okay? And they're all using the same tool, right? So they're all able to feed that information directly back to the police. Has Johnny attended the sessions? Is he doing well? Johnny's Uncle Bob can talk to his mentor. Johnny's Uncle Bob can raise an issue with the diversion specialist and say he's worried about Johnny. All that communication goes through. All of that follow-up work that police officers have to do, that anyone that's working with a network of companies know how long it takes to ring up all of those different companies and find out what's going on. Did Johnny turn up here? Did he turn up there? What did he think of this appointment? That's all taken care of, right? All you see is the output and the results now. And most importantly, all of this can carry on after the police disengage. So at the end of the out-of-court disposal, the police walk away. Well, all of this positive communication, all of this positive affirmation, that carries on. The mentor can keep working with them. The sports club can keep working with them. Johnny keeps having all of this access through the tool that they've got. Okay? Oh, there we go. We don't have enough data at the moment, but we're building it. We're building the data structure so we can begin to understand what works. So I talked about this initially. You know, we've only done a few hundred cases at the moment, but as you know, if we roll this out across the whole country, there will be hundreds of thousands of data points that we can reference. We'll start to understand: does Johnny attend this appointment? Does he think it's good? Does he give good feedback? Does he get good feedback? Is he interacting with the app? And then, based on that knowledge, the next time Type Johnny comes in, we kind of know what to do with him. We know the type of appointments that Johnny turns up to. We know that it's sports clubs. We know that it's support groups. And we know that other things don't work. So the system learns over time. You know, like I talked, Netflix, right? What Netflix shows me versus what it shows my wife is two very different, types of film. Our system will learn over time exactly what works for different users. Critically, it's got to be easy for the officer, right? I think IT in the policing sector hasn't got a great track record. We're really trying to make it look familiar, right? Our system looks like other apps that officers use in their private time, right? So we're trying to make it as easy as possible to work with officers. We've made the decision-making easy. We've made the assessment process simple. We've made the referral automatic. And according to one of the forces that are using our system, not us, they're saving 86 minutes per case, right, by processing it via us. And that doesn't include all of that follow-up time that they're still doing on the outside. All of that will be eliminated as well. So it's a significant saving to the police officer. If you extrapolate that, Andy said it before, 500,000 cases. In our business case, we've got 450,000 cases as a potential in the UK. That's 550 officers' worth of time that the system would save and put those officers back on the street. Okay? But taking it back to per officer, 86 minutes of time saved. You could watch an entire episode of Toy Story in that time. which is much more productive than processing a case. The reason I use Toy Story is because this film, if you watch it, is an amazing example of what you can achieve when you collaborate on a strong goal. I'll hand over to Peter.
Thank you, Jonathan. Brilliant. Our next speaker in this session is Peter Nehru. Peter is former Chief Constable, Director of the Police Executive Programme at the University of Cambridge, distinguished academic. Peter, over to you.
So the first thing I'm going to do is to get all my Cambridge students to stand up, and there's a reason for this. Don't be shy. On your feet. Okay. There's a bit of shyness going on. Right, and there's a reason for that. You can sit down now, because actually it's quite important to explain how we got there. Okay? We didn't get there on the back of a bunch of academics doing big ESRC grant research. We got up there on the back of senior leaders in policing doing applied research in the field and inputting both their experience as well as being supervised to do high quality research. So, Turning Point 2, Outcome 22, Checkpoint, etc. I could go round that group and a few others. Each one of the elements of what was gone up on that screen has been researched in the field by a cop or a member of police staff taking ownership of the science. And that's the responsibility of a group like this from every aspect of the piece. And the result of that is, over the period of the last 10 years, through a whole series of trials, and it's still very much ongoing, we've been able to expand the evidence and also add some of the costs which are important to, well, not just to the Treasury, they're important to forces when times are hard, and they're important in making the case. And this is, I'm just going to very briefly summarise, because I'm well aware of the time, Danny. I wrote an evidence review for the National Police Chiefs Council about 3 years ago when we were debating the two-tier. That's a highlight of the evidence. It works. It works quite well, provided that you do the job well, and the putting in some of this technology really matters. It does increase, Andy referred to it, he was referring to our research in Birmingham. It does improve the victim satisfaction, provided you explain things properly, which I suppose could go across the whole system. It does reduce cost, and if you do the conditions right, and that's why this piece of software is so vital, we learnt in Birmingham that you actually have to create prompts and you have to provide effectively a prescription tool to enable people to get the dose right. You are not trying to put people with conditions that they could end up with if they went to magistrates' court on a third or fourth occasion. These are largely first-time offenders. You must match the conditions to the reasons for their offending, and you need to be careful and thoughtful and sophisticated about that. I've summarised on the slide for you the kind of growing body of evidence. There is a lot of it out there, and as the chair of the Campbell collaboration, I managed to get the police-led diversion systematically reviewed. That figure of about 15% is based on trials that some of which worked and some of which were not great. We can do better than 15%, but any chief in this country would take 15%. Because a big question that lies in the room is to, well, who's the right target audience? Around about 60% of your offenders are low-harm offenders, definitely suitable. Durham have actually pushed the boundaries into medium harm offenders, and again, no reason to think that it couldn't be effective, and no reason to think that we should just give up because someone's had a couple of failures. And just my final slide, which is absolutely related to Jonathan's tool, and that is, if you want to do this, you absolutely must do it well. There is no point in doing inadequately done cautions just to tick a box on the 22 outcomes. That is both a waste of money and likely to make things worse. You must screen the offenders properly. The tool does that. It does it in a quicker time and in a more structured way than anything I've seen so far. You must match the needs of the offender to the outcomes. I mean, some of the early conditions in Turning Point, I mean, goodness me. Because there was no skills to do this. And finally, last but not least, you heard Andy say it, the lack of supervision and oversight. If you do not track, as Elfwin has demonstrated in Northumbria with Outcome 22, be surprised it ain't going that well. Open the tin, look at the data, intervene, improve. Thank you.
Very much. Peter, thank you very much for that succinct and punchy presentation.